Our next guest says the Democratic Party infighting could sink the infrastructure vote today. Chris Krueger is here. He's Washington Research Group strategist over at Cowen. Chris, although Pelosi's not, she's the kind of lawmaker, I think she has often said she doesn't bring anything to a vote that's not going to pass.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's still our base case that this will probably be delayed later tonight. But, she still has, 8 hours on the clock. So why would you wave the white flag now? But following Manchin's comments and following the comments from, House progressives, plus sort of the blockade from House Republicans, it seems increasingly unlikely that it'll be held tonight. But that's not, the end of the world at all. It'll just sort of, the process will continue. The bipartisan infrastructure framework and the reconciliation bill will, be recoupled, and we'll be probably talking about this up to Thanksgiving.
Up to Thanksgiving. I mean, the broader sort of context here is that this is the chance for President Biden to really, kind of set the tone for what his agenda, what his first year in office is going to accomplish, right? So it seems to be that there's this war. Is it going to be infrastructure, or is it going to be a marquee budget bill with a lot of, wish list items for progressives? Obviously, they don't want it to be none of the above. So what's your latest thinking here?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, this is sort of the silly season in Washington. September, the sky is yellow, the sun's blue. But at the end of the day, we think it'll be pretty much everything. Call it $550 billion in new spend on quote unquote hard infrastructure. Then that reconciliation bill somewhere in the $2.5 trillion range. That's sort of green infrastructure, human infrastructure, right? It's infrastructure year. And it's on the heels of $1.9 trillion in March, the stimulus checks and others. So provided it gets done, that's a big first year. But when you look back, President Obama, President Trump, their landmark bills didn't get done until late Q4. And with Obama, really it was late Q5 of the spring of the following year. So, pretty much, par for the course.
All right, that's really helpful. And I notice here that as you're talking about some of the timeframes or deadlines they might be thinking about, that the UN Climate Change Conference is one of them, November 1st. And, that it's probably important that the White House is able to go and say, hey, look, here's what we're doing in the U.S. and, these big initiatives. But sort of my current obsession, I think increasingly the obsession with markets, Chris, and I want to ask what you think is going to happen politically in Washington, is with this energy price spike. I mean, it's getting kind of scary. And in the U.S., we're a little bit more insulated than the rest of the world. But if we start seeing bills spike, or worse, if there's shortages, for heating and other things heading into the winter, how could that complicate all of these efforts that you're describing?
Yeah, typically when there are crises or problems in Washington, sort of the typical response is to throw money at the problem. Not all the time, but, I think what you'll see with Democrats, the closer we get to, end of year, whether that's Thanksgiving, the climate change conference, et cetera, and you're also going to have a new deadline with December 3rd, right? That's when the government funding will expire. Really kind of, I think, a clarity that Manchin's statement today didn't resolve too many questions. I think a lot of the numbers that Manchin had in that draft are pretty much base case for most investors. So, these things always look like they are a disaster, and then sort of, right at the last second, you come together. That's just sort of how, unfortunately, the process works.
No, and you're quite right when you say, throw money at it one way or the other here. Just a quick final comment then. Are we to assume the same will happen with debt ceiling? What's the drop dead date at this point? What Yellen is talking about?
Well, so Secretary Yellen has put the X date at October 18th. I think it's important to note, though, that that's not a date that the U.S. would default. That's just the date that the Treasury can't give 100% certainty of matching the inflows and the outflows. So in reality, you're probably talking Halloween. At the end of the day, though, we're reasonably confident that this will be a second reconciliation bill, a debt component. The Democrats can raise this by themselves. It does seem like Senator Schumer wants to sort of attempt to beat Senator McConnell, over the head with sort of accusations of hypocrisy. That generally doesn't work with Senator McConnell. So I think at the end of the day, you'll see a reconciliation raise. and the debt ceiling will be raised like it always is.
All right. Well, great clarification on a number of these points, Chris, that markets watching very closely. Thanks for your time.